Welcome to this comprehensive tutorial on building a 3D Battle Royale game using Java. In this series, we'll explore everything from setting up our environment to implementing gameplay mechanics. Let's dive into it. To create a Battle Royale game, we need some essential components: a game engine, 3D models, sound assets, and a development environment. Let's start by configuring our environment. For this tutorial, we'll use the libgdx framework, which is well suited for 2D and 3D games in Java. First, ensure you have Java Development Kit, JDK, installed. You can download it from Oracle's website. Next, we'll set up libgdx. To set up libgdx, visit the official libgdx website and use the Setup tool to generate a new project. Choose your game name, package name, and select the platforms you want to support. Make sure you select the 3D options. Once you've generated your project, extract the files and open them in your favorite IDE. I recommend using IntelliJ IDEA or Eclipse for Java development. Now, let's explore the project structure. Our main game class will typically extend the game class in libgdx. Let's create our first class in the core module that initializes the game. In the create method, we'll set up our screens. Screens in libgdx allow us to manage different game states like menus, gameplay, and game over screens. Let's create a simple menu screen. Next, configure your game to use the menu screen when the game starts. In the create method, let's switch to the menu screen. Now we need to start working on our 3D environment. First, we will create a basic 3D model for our terrain. libgdx supports various 3D model formats, most commonly .g3dj and .g3dj. You can create models using software like Blender. For this example, let's assume we have created a simple terrain model and named it terrain.g3dj. We will load this model within our game. Make sure to place this model in the Assets folder of your core module. Next, we will implement a camera to navigate our 3D world. Using a perspective camera gives players a better sense of depth. Let's initialize our camera. Don't forget to update the camera during rendering. In the render method of our game or screen class, we can update the camera's position depending on player input. Now that we have our camera and terrain set up, let's start implementing player controls. Firstly, create a player class that will handle player movements and actions. We will handle input using libgdx's input processor. Let's implement controls to allow the player to move around the map. Don't forget to set the input processor in your create method. With player movement implemented, let's add the next layer of complexity, spawning multiple players on the battlefield. We'll utilize a list to manage active players. To visualize our players, you will need to create a simple 3D model for the player avatar. Once you've created the model and placed it in the Assets folder, load it into the game similar to the terrain. Now, let's draw each player in the render method. For now, let's keep all players at the same position just for visualization. With players spawning correctly, we need to implement some form of player interactions. Players should be able to pick up items, such as weapons or health packs. Start by creating an item class. Next, create a list to manage all generated items in the world and a method to spawn them randomly on the map. Since our players need to interact with these items, implement a method for the player class to check for collisions with items. In the render method, we will also render these items. Load the item model and incorporate rendering logic similarly as done for players. Now let's discuss how we can design the battle mechanics for our game. Players must compete by eliminating each other and surviving until the end. Each player can have health, damage, and a method to attack. Make sure to update the player's health status and possibly mark them as out when their health reaches 0. We can also create a visual indicator for knockdown players. To create suspense in the gameplay, a shrinking play area is commonly used in Battle Royale games. We can implement a circular zone that shrinks over time. Players outside the shrinking radius would start taking damage over time. Implement a method inside the player class to handle this. With our foundational game mechanics in place, it's crucial to start adding polish to the game. Implement animations for player movements and actions. Sound effects play an essential role in enhancing player experience. Access the Assets folder and add sound files for actions such as player footsteps, shooting, and explosions. Load and play sounds in the corresponding methods. In our menu screen, let's add an option to start the game. You can render buttons using Simple Button or create custom buttons with textures. Make sure to implement a scoreboard system that keeps track of player eliminations and a countdown timer for respawns. To visually represent the scoreboard, use a bitmap font to render scores on the screen. Now that we have implemented the key functionalities of our Battle Royale game, let's focus on testing and polishing our game. Balancing game mechanics is vital. Before we wrap up this tutorial, let's discuss deployment. libgdx allows you to export your game to multiple platforms, such as PC, Android, and iOS. Make sure to set up the Gradlu file properly for your desired platform. To build your game, simply run the Gradlu build command from your terminal. Ensure you have the necessary SDKs installed on your system. Congratulations! You've completed this tutorial on building a basic 3D Battle Royale game with Java and libgdx. Keep experimenting, adding features, and refining your game to make it more unique and enjoyable. Don't forget to subscribe for more programming tutorials.